Hi everybody, welcome to Sotheby's Institute of Art. I'm Christine Kwan. I'm the CEO and director of the Institute. And for those of you who are new to the Institute tonight, Sotheby's Institute is the leading graduate school for the study of art and its markets. So I'm so thrilled all of you could join us tonight for this fantastic panel about art galleries just after Armory Week. And I'm sure you're all exhausted, but it's so exciting to be here tonight with Magnus Resch. And it's my pleasure to introduce Magnus, our panel organizer tonight. I'm sure you're all aware Magnus is a book author, a professor, an entrepreneur, and his app Magnus was just written up in the Financial Times this past weekend. And his books, Management of Art Galleries and 100 Secrets of the Art World, are widely referenced in our field and definitely at the Institute. This evening, Magnus will present his newest book, The Global Art Gallery Report 2016, alongside some of the top gallerists in the industry. And I just want to welcome and thank Magnus for doing this tonight and all of our panelists who are going to join us in a little bit. And we're going to have a book signing and a discussion and reception right after the panel. Thank you. Magnus.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for coming out on Tuesday night at 7 p.m. To the Institute. I'm a big fan, I must say, of the I like to walk around.
Maybe can we give him the microphone?
Cool. Hey, so I'm a big fan of the Institute because what I realized, so many people who work in the art industry were actually educated here. And I think what Christine is doing is fantastic. Especially now, I mean, I looked at the syllabus of all the courses here. It's a great institute if you want to be active in the art world. So you chose the right place, whoever is studying here. Now, what I want to do today is I want to talk a little bit about my newest book, which is actually an ebook. You can all download it for free. It's published by Phaidon. You can download it on their website, phaidon.com. What I did there is I actually looked at numbers. Why is that relevant? Numbers, usually in the art world, they're kind of boring. Nobody wants to talk about numbers, and we don't really know much about numbers. I believe numbers are really important to clear up with some of the myths that are existing in the art world. So let's just look at some of them. You all know this, right? The TIFAF Art Market Report. This one is mentioned in every newspaper around the world. You know the market is 60, 70 billion in size, whatever. Now, when you look at how this data comes together, we see this. So this is actually from the report. What it says is there are 295,000 businesses, art dealers in the world. 300,000 dealers. Based on this, the revenue numbers and all the other details are calculated. Now, what I did with my team, I actually sat down and counted the number of galleries that exist around the world. And we came to a totally different conclusion. So just look at this. For 10 years, we've heard that there are 300,000 galleries in the world. The truth is, there are only 20,000. Maybe 19, maybe 21, but something around this. This changes everything fundamentally. Why is that relevant to you? Because the art market itself isn't as big as we always thought. And people like you who want to be active in it should be aware of this. And this is what this whole report is about. Now, when we look at the location of galleries, we also find a very interesting number. And that is 83% of all galleries are actually in the US and the EU. So all this story about Asia is so hot and trendy, and yeah, I'm going to start my gallery there because it's emerging and upcoming. Wow, you've got to go in these markets. Not really. Not really. It's really happening in the US and the EU. When we look at it on a country level, it becomes even clearer. The US is leading by far. 34% of all galleries are in the US. And China, everyone is talking about, really comes at a very last place. Look at it on a city view. That's interesting. So New York is by far the number one. If I would start a gallery, I would certainly do it not in Milan or Amsterdam. I think I would do it in New York. Why? Because New York is also the place where not only all the galleries are, but also where the auction houses are. And that's the interesting part, because Berlin comes on third place, and Berlin is on the auction level not relevant at all. You know, I mean, Hong Kong by far is the third largest auction market, certainly not Berlin. So here you see a huge discrepancy between the primary and the secondary market. Now, who wants to become a gallerist here? Sorry for that picture. Who wants to become a gallerist in here? Richard. All right. Really, usually when I do these talks, there are more people. No? But you all want to work in the art world. You want to become a gallerist. Okay. Now, let me tell you something about numbers. Again, revenue is so small. It's not the shiny gallery business that we always think it is. When you look at this, 55% of all galleries make less than $200,000 revenue. That's 200,000 minus the 50% that goes to the artist. So that leaves you with 100,000 revenue, and you have to pay rent, employees, and all the other costs associated to your gallery business. It's not an attractive industry. So people come and say, yeah, Magnus, revenue, okay, but it's a highly profitable business. 50% go to the artist, 50%. Huge margins. Let's look at the profit margins. 30% of all galleries run at a loss. Again, not an attractive industry. The gallery world is not Gagosian. It's really, it's not. It's the 30% that make losses. It's really, really tough. Now, another number shows you this. Only 7% have been established for more than 35 years. When you look at the auction houses, they've been around for so long, and that's what the art world always prides itself. Hey, I like to work with gallerists, with artists, I want to do something sustainable. I want not only for this generation, but for the next. Not really working out in the gallery world, just by looking at the numbers. I'm not coming up with this. I just looked at foundation year of galleries. So 50% have been founded after 2000. When we look at it in the next 15 years, we see the same number. Galleries open and they close. It's tough. So when you are smart and say, hey, but I'm not going to start a gallery, like most of you, you don't start a gallery because you know all this that I'm presenting you here. Most of you probably want to work in a gallery. It's highly unlikely that you will get hired as a full-time employee. Did I just destroy some dreams of working in a gallery? They are probably hiring, you know. I mean, they are the good ones. So 40% have no full-time employee. You probably, most likely, when you enter the art world and work as an employee, you'll be a contractor, so you write invoices. Now, if you like to work in the art world, and I think that's the last graphic, I recommend you to go and work for an art fair, because it seems like they're not dying out. When you look at this, I asked gallerists, so this data is based on 8,000, on a survey with 8,000 galleries, and we asked them, what do you think in the future? Will you participate at more, less, or equal amount of art fairs? And they really like art fairs, equal or more. That's really where you see the high bars. So that was it about the numbers. If you like to download the report, go to Fiden.com, and you can download it for free there. Or you just write me an email, and I'm happy to send it to you. Now, all this boring stuff with the numbers, let's just, you know, that's only one side of the market, really. Let's just hear to some gallerists who will tell us something about the real world. Maybe this is all bullshit. So let me invite you to join the stage, Stefania, James, and Richard. Thank you. Perfect. Can you hear me, guys? All right. So let me briefly introduce you to the to our panel guests today. We start with Stefania. Stefania was born in Italy. She opened her gallery in 2005 after leaving top positions at Gagosian.
Correct.
And today you're working out of Chelsea, but you will soon move to Tribeca, I heard. Interestingly enough, Stefania is also a graduate from the Institute, but in London.
Long time ago.
5 years ago it is.
Yeah. Since then I worked at Sotheby's. I had a little gallery in Barcelona. Then I went to London back to London to work at Anthony Dauphin. Then 7 years at Gagosian and 11 years my gallery. So it's a long time.
So, Richard, you worked for, you studied at the Christie's.
For me not to talk about that. So.
Yeah, but that's why you come here tonight, to actually, you're switching the sides.
You think it's a good sign?
Well, yeah, it's a good sign. You started your gallery very recently, in 2015, and if I remember it correctly, in 2 days from today, it's your 2nd anniversary.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
So congratulations to this. You are actually, as your name suggests, you're coming from a family, the famous champagne maker family, but then you decided to switch your career and work in the art world. You did the Christie's program and then worked for Philips Depury.
Actually, I started working as a free intern at Philips. I was 27 years old, and I learned so much, And so that kind of internship, you don't do that for the money. And then.
And then you switched to Resch, right? In 2007, you came to New York.
And I was intern again.
Okay.
It was in Paris, and I realized there was nothing to do there, and I managed to move to New York to work for a gallery in Chelsea at that time called Cueto Project, and then. I realized that it was time for me to study. You need to do a master to get some background. So I did the Master of Christie's. And then I set up my art advisory company 2010 and the gallery on March 2 years ago,
Great. And James. So James was actually one of the first galleries. When I moved to New York, you were one of the first I ran into, because I spoke to 2 other gallerists before, and I said, who else should I meet for my book? Where I did case studies of art galleries, and everyone said, meet James. And it seems like you're the nicest guy in the art world. So if you want to meet the nicest guy in the art world, he's sitting next to me. Unfortunately, he's married. But the interesting story is, your gallery is on the Lower East Side. You started it there in 2007. And you were one of the first to move there, but you're kind of the expert of the Lower East Side because you were born there and raised there. So it's kind of your home ground where your gallery is. And something which I really liked and I think most people don't know is, you actually, when you started your first gallery, you worked at the same time as security guard at the Met. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, and I think very early on I was determined to have a gallery, even if it meant I had to subsidize it with a job as a security guard.
Yeah, let's talk about this a bit. You said subsidized, and we saw these numbers before. Is it really that bad?
I think initially, it's I think everyone's sort of prepared to lose money for the first few years. It's kind of typical, and I mean, as with most businesses, I would imagine, like upstart costs far override kind of what you're able to do in the first 1 or 2 years, you know. But when I was a security guard at the Met, I wasn't really trying to be strategic about it at all. I was just, I had a job there, I found a space, and I just kind of, without thinking about it, just delved right into it, you know. And
well, hang on. So, Richard, I mean, now you've been running your gallery for how many years?
10 years.
And it's going well.
Yes, it's going great.
It's going great.
Yeah.
Richard, you're new in the game, right? 2 years ago you started this. How's it going?
Well, it's true what the people say about the first 2 years. It was tough. But I was working before, you know, it took me 7 years to open my gallery. That's the reality. And I have to say that I'm so pleased to be in the Lower East Side. And James kind of paved the way, because since I moved to New York in 2007, it was like one of the galleries where I was like visiting. And so like 3 years ago, the idea to move to open a gallery in the Lower East Side was kind of still a challenge. And today, it's kind of an interesting alternative to Chelsea.
Let's talk about location a bit. Stefania, you're moving to Tribeca, I think, very soon, right? Next month or so.
Yeah, end of April.
And you were in Chelsea for 11 years. Why are you moving?
Well, my whole block is going to be torn down, so I kind of have no choice. Where Anton Kern used to be, there's going to be a 20-story condo. My building is going to be 10-story office building. Jehovah's Witnesses next to me are also going for another condo. It's the way Chelsea's going. I must say, I live there. I can't wait to get out of there. The construction is killing. I mean, it's awful to walk around it. And what's happening is that as galleries lose their lease, they're really trying to figure out a place to go. So Casey Kaplan went to the Flower Market District. Gavin went to Harlem. Not a couple of galleries went to Harlem. I didn't want to be in Harlem. Anton Kern is going Midtown, very close to here. You can visit him, 55th and 5th. With Trump now, I don't know. it's going to be tough, but.
But why Tribeca?
Because, well, I'm very close to Artist Space, and they found a big space there. The one that used to be in Green Street, in the same block where I am. There's someone else who used to work at David's Werner is opening there. Alexander and Boning are there. I'm going to be there. We hope that, with 4 things, maybe more will come. Tribeca is kind of this weird thing. There's nothing on the ground floor and lots of money upstairs.
So what I found out in my PhD, what I did there is I analyzed what makes an art gallery successful, not really looking at the program at all, just looking at data. And what I realized is that location has not an impact on the success of a gallery. That means even if you are a little bit outside of the Chelsea and these areas, the hot spots, you can still be a successful gallery. So Tribeca is also not really known to be the hotspot of the gallery world.
No, not at all. Not yet.
Not yet, but it will change. James, you mentioned once the gallery business is a real estate business.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
Yeah, well, I feel like especially in New York City, there's so much problem solving that has to be done with regard to your space and your lease and location and your overhead and all these things that, in my observation, choosing wisely or being a little bit fortunate or early can contribute immensely to your success if with regards to your gallery location. Tribeca is really interesting right now because while it's the residential real estate is probably amongst the most expensive real estate in New York City, the commercial spaces are somehow very undervalued. If you walk down Chambers Street, you see 99-cent stores and kind of things that you wouldn't really expect to find in Tribeca. So I asked my colleague at Alexander and Bonin what they were paying for their 7,200 square foot space. And it turned out to only be a few $1,000s more than what I'm paying for my 1,800 square foot space in the Lower East Side. And that really made it sink in and put it into perspective that already in the Lower East Side, we're paying way too much. you know.
Rent is the number one cost driver in galleries, and the number one reason why galleries fail, because galleries fail because their costs are too high. Why? I mean, I see galleries now starting to run this, I call it the light cost approach, where they don't have a permanent space and pay rent. Why is space, a physical space that I rent throughout the year, so relevant? Richard?
I think it's a good question. It's as a dealer, it's necessary to have a public space. It's before I opened my gallery, actually I had a kind of gallery space. It was like in my apartment. I did that, which is a classic. And I realized that the big ticket is to be able to attend the big art fairs, like Art Basel, Frieze, Armory, Jack. And the only reason to do it as a dealer is you need to have a permanent like all year long program.
Public space, yeah.
Yeah, and to be like public space, right?
No, but also galleries, we're not here to sell art. Sorry, this is, we have to go back to, we try to make culture. We are a stage for artists to come and do a show, and hopefully that show might become, big show, something that people will remember, will stay in our culture. So it's important to have a physical space, otherwise...
Is that one of the reasons why you're doing the Artist and City project?
For example.
Maybe we want to briefly talk about that.
We can talk about bigger issues first, maybe. I don't know.
No, but I mean, it fits really well. So the Artist City project is where you, is a project Stefania started, and what she does is she goes out of New York and finds interesting locations where art can be exhibited, but on a much larger scale without any boundaries.
Well, it was a question of rent and real estate. So I realized that talking with some artists, they wanted to do an exhibition that was a little longer and allows for mistakes, because artists usually are not allowed mistakes when they are the museums, but galleries were supposed to be the place where you go and experiment and you can try out certain things, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But in New York, you cannot do it. You have a mistake, and then I still have my rent, my employees, and everything else. Whereas all over the rest of America, whatever space it costs, a 10th, a 20th, no, much less. It costs like nothing. You can rent something for $500, and it's a fantastic space in wherever, and pretty much anywhere, but New York and San Francisco. So I thought, why don't I, talk about it with the artists and find a city that makes sense for them, and then rent became 1 year because that's a minimum lease, and then they have the space and they can do whatever mistakes they want. It's not a residency, it's an exhibition. And it's open to the public, and people go and employ local students, and they go and manage, and for the 2 people that go visit per day. So that's Artist City.
Richard, you mentioned art fairs. So to me, I mean, to how many art fairs did you go in 2016?
Like 6 or 7.
And James, you?
5.
5. So when I look at it, again, let's say with the location thing, because it's so relevant, it's so expensive, the location. So summer, anyway, the galleries are closed, and not you. You're also open on Sunday,
They
right?
open like almost every day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's not so much traffic going through.
Actually not. I mean, actually there is. We are lucky in the Lower East Side to have a lot of traffic, and more. There is. We sell every day now. I mean, it's possible. There is this kind of change. In summertime, everybody say like you should not do an important show during summertime.
Yeah.
So guess what? That could be, on the contrary, a great opportunity, because
Yeah,
everybody is
exactly.
like slow down. So why don't you do something good? And so yeah, summertime is great. It's not about selling. It's about exposure. It's about like to promote your program, and it's, I don't know. It's I mean, I read your first book,
Yeah.
and I love it, and I really recommend it.
This one, right?
Yeah, but and
You can buy it,
I tried to download it, but that didn't work. I don't know if you tried, but mine didn't.
Oh, the
work.
report, yeah.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can download it. Yeah.
But in your book, it was interesting because you were saying like, in terms of opportunities for dealers, for galleries, to new galleries, to our galleries to improve. You said something like, why don't you do something else than what most of the people do?
And what is that? Because you're open, I mean, your opening hours are different.
We are open, I mean, in the Lower East Side, those guys started this idea, but on Sunday. And guess what? All the rest of the city is closed on Sunday. But if you go to the Lower East Side on Sunday, it's a great time to have a brunch. And you can see also a gallery. You can see a good show after your brunch. And that's fun, you know.
What role do art fair play? I mean, when I asked these galleries, 8,000 galleries, they all said, hey, we want to participate at more or an equal amount of art fairs. James, are you going to increase the number of art fairs you're participating at?
Right now I'm scaling back because it's been a bit of a rocky kind of market, and basically the art fair consistently tends to be a situation where I feel like I'm rolling the dice, you know, and the analogy of the casino is also quite interesting because the house always wins, you know, and
that's why I like NADA or
right,
TIFA.
right.
It's kind of giving back, right?
Right, exactly. So, yeah, I've just tried to make a few decisions this year where I'm not taking any risks with fairs, which is kind of a hard thing to do. There's a handful of fairs that are worth it even if you
Which
lose
ones?
money. Well, we're doing we just did the ADAA, the art show.
Did you lose money?
At the Armory. No, we didn't. No.
Cool.
We
That's a good one.
yeah,
It's
and
not expensive, and there are real buyers coming through.
ADAA?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the fair in New York, like for sure.
Who went? Good. And who went to Armory? Yeah, more people.
Yeah, yeah. Bigger fair.
You missed something.
Yeah.
Better quality ADA.
Yeah,
Not just because James and
Which
I
one
were
did you
in
go
it.
to? Yeah, better quality, right? I know. Two people exhibited that. Their booth sucked.
So I would say, for the life of the gallery, which fairs to do from year to year is always negotiation. You kind of have to assess.
But
where-
Art Basel, you're doing, right?
I did it for 2 years.
Mhm.
I'm not doing it this year. But I did Art Basel for 2 years, and I did the Lista Art Fair for 3 years before that, which is the young
Oh, yeah, it's
art
the
fair
cool one, yeah.
in Basel. Yeah, the art fair experience is a challenging one. I mean, we're fortunate to be in New York because if we didn't attend a single art fair in a year, business would not be impacted, I don't think.
Because you have anyway so much traffic and collectors are here.
Because this is the center of the international art market.
Yeah.
If I was a gallery in Berlin, however, I would need to be on the road once a month, going to every art fair I possibly can, because Berlin's extremely quiet as far as like local collectors are concerned. So, yeah, so I always have that in mind.
Stefania, how many fairs did is that some?
So I'm cutting back too.
Yeah, I read this. Yeah.
I love Basel's, both of them, because that's less of a gamble, frankly. I mean, I never not made money in Basel or Miami. Freeze and FIAC are a gamble. And so I prefer to gamble where it's not as expensive. Freeze and FIAC cost as much as Basel, and maybe you don't sell as good. So I like the little ones. I do Chicago,
Italy?
Mexico. I'm doing Me Art.
Okay.
I haven't been in Italy for a long time with a fair. So these are the nice ones because the risk is low. You know, you don't want to do a fair that costs you, $100,000 and then you sell very little. Then you don't.
Yeah. So a booth at let's say at Art Basel.
Booth,
Basel,
hotels, transport,
it's like
restaurants,
100K
dinners, blah blah blah. So yeah, we count.
So you need to sell for 200,000 in order to to break even.
To zero.
Yeah. That's difficult.
That's difficult.
Richard, how did it? You were now for the first time at Armory, and your booth was voted as one of the best there. I read it. Yeah, I read this.
Yeah,
And Artsy did a fantastic journal. I don't know if you saw it, those guys. This journal was just amazing. this paper, newspaper that they did, and there was a big story about you. So congratulations to that. Is art fairs, is that something? Is the goal Art Basel, or do you just want to go to fairs where you think that fit to your profile?
Yeah, I think there, as the big guys just mentioned, there are different type of quality of fairs, and I agree with you. It's important to be very to focus on results, for sure. In my case scenario, I believe those art fairs are fantastic stages, and I've got some serious ambition for my gallery, and the plan is, yes, to be part of Art Basel. If I could, all of them, and Freeze and FIAC, why not? And Armory was a great way to start. We did the first one last year, a very nice art fair called 154, specialized on African art, because I represent a international artist. That was great. That was in Red Hook, so it's a great place for studio. It's nice art fair, but Armory Show is like a ticket for the big league. And so it's it was fun. And there is a great new director called Benjamin Ginocchio. So they are changing. It's true, like Ada for a long time, and still today is probably the best one at that time. But the Armory Show are improving, and so we were in the modern section. It was kind of.
But you know what I find so interesting about art fairs, and James just said it brilliantly. So there are so many players in the art world, and the auction houses are kind of making money, at least 2 or 3 of them. The galleries are really struggling, but the art fair companies, they're really making money, because it's a simple deal for them. You just buy square space here, and that's it. And they become so relevant in the art world. I mean, participating at Art Basel really tells something about the gallery. But the company that is behind it has nothing to do with the art world. It's a company that, one day they do art fairs, the next day they do whatever.
Jewelry. Watches.
That's why I like TIFAF and NADA. And you were involved in NADA somehow.
Yes.
Right? Because that's kind of non-profits, and they trying to give back to the galleries. Is that also, so rents are cheaper there?
I don't think they're that much less expensive. I think the rents tend to be tied to the expense of functioning in a certain convention center in a certain city, and they're all quite expensive. At the end of the day, no one's come up with the subsidized art fair yet, which is one of my. I have 100 business plans or schemes on the side.
Yeah, tell them they're going to execute it.
Someone can do it.
So James wants to do an art fair. Whoever wants to join his team, please go ahead. It's james@jamesfuentes.com.
An art fair that's free for the gallerists.
That's a good one.
Which is possible. By watch company or something.
Right.
But you do it anyway,
easy, right?
That's a very good idea.
Yeah.
Sure.
The other idea I have
one person signed up. Maybe Stefania. Great.
So totally sponsored.
Totally sponsored. Yeah, but very hard to get into.
Yeah. What would be the conditions to enter?
We can be the committee, the 3 of us.
That's a good one.
Yeah. The other idea that I have is eco-friendly packing supplies, because it's the one thing that makes me sick to my stomach every day.
Same here.
Yeah, seriously. It's like the waste that we generate from packing artworks is kind of insane, But those are the only ones I'm going to verbalize today. Business schemes.
It's such a good point.
Yeah.
It's true, we spend so much time. We waste so much of these packing tapes and all the time. So
let's talk a bit about not the packaging, but let's talk a bit about the secondary market. Is that true that money is made? Galleries are making most of their money in the secondary market by dealing. Stefania, are you?
I do a little bit. I happen to be Italian, and I'm know a lot of Italian collectors, so when they want to sell Italian art, sometimes they send it to me rather than to other dealers. And then I do some secondary market on my artists. That's it. I don't go out looking for it. You can't call me up and say, oh, I'm looking for a Warhol fright wig, and I'm going to tell you where to call, who to call, but not. I'm not going to go out and look for it.
Richard, you your background, you worked at Philips for a while, and you bought the estate of Nasso Stafnis in 2015, so very early on when you started. Is the secondary market part of your business plan?
Yeah. It's for me it's very important the role of the galleries for emerging artists to help them to produce exhibitions. You see, like for the first 2 years of the gallery, we did a lot of large installations. So I like this idea, kind of a Robin Hood style that you take from the old guys and you help the young artists. So
it's cross-financing.
Yeah.
The money that you make in the secondary cross-finance the upcoming emerging artists.
Yeah.
James, what about you? I mean, when we last talked, secondary market was still something that you wanted to explore, but you're not really into it.
Yeah, I think I'm focused on trying to get into it more over the next few years, just because it seems to kind of naturally be coming my way somewhat. And also I've been dealing a lot in the secondary market of my own artists. And
do you bid at auctions?
No, I haven't really gotten to that point yet. And in a way, my logic when an artist that I work with goes to auction is that I do the best that I can to share the work with people that I think might be interested in it. But if I try to play that game, I think it would be quite a dangerous move, because I've seen peers of mine bid very high amounts of money to protect their artist's market, which, like 5 months later, that market didn't exist, and the way young artists are kind of like filtering through the auction house right now is it's crazy, and it's like playing with fire as a young gallerist to try to really get involved with that, I think. So I kind of choose not to play that game. But it was interesting to read in your book that there's the art world money pie, and the auction house is about that much of the pie, and the galleries are like this much of the pie, and it really put things into perspective for me, because I realized we're all kind of chasing after, the same collectors within a very small market, and it's kind of interesting.
Now switching to the other side of the market, the really emerging one, I think you've got an interesting model with Alan Eldridge.
Right.
It took me, when he first mentioned Alan Eldridge to me, it took me actually a while to figure out where this name comes from, but now, since I live on the Lower East Side, I got it.
Right.
It's the intersection of the streets, right? Alan and Eldridge there.
Yeah, the galleries between Alan and Eldridge.
Exactly.
So it sounds like an
So
intersection.
what is that? Maybe you want to explain that?
Well, I basically, I renovated my gallery 2 years ago, and it was the most ambitious space I've had yet for the gallery, and feels like a lot of pressure. So I'm scheduling shows 6 months to a year ahead, and it all feels kind of very calculated in a way, and analytical in a way. And I started Alan and Eldridge as a way to sort of maintain this opportunity to be more flexible with my exhibition programming. So I tend to show younger artists at Alan and Eldridge. The scale of the space is comparable to the scale of the first gallery I started 10 years ago. So it's kind of sticking to my...
So it's a hub for emerging artists which you can show there at a low
very
risk.
low risk.
Because it's within the gallery space.
Yes. Yes.
When we talk about identifying artists, that's also a way for you to, because you do a lot of exhibitions there. It's really a playground. I call it, in my book, I call it the garage. So kind of the place where you can play around really at a low risk. Stefania, you worked for Gagosian, and there one of your job was to identify new artists, but they weren't really the emerging, straight out of university kind of artists. They were more, I read that you brought to Gagosian Jeff Koons, Mike Kelly, and others.
Yeah.
So very emerging, upcoming artists
Well,
back then, straight out of
I
university.
was working with Jeff Koons when I was at Anthony Dauphin, and you could not sell his work to save your life. Mike Kelly, forget about it. I mean, nobody wanted it. So we rescued Jeff Koons, frankly. Like,
Wow.
Larry and I
Oh,
rescued
really?
Jeff Koons. He was totally bankrupt. He was back down to one assistant in his studio.
When was that?
Late 90s, not that long ago.
Interesting. Let
I
me write
arrived in
this down.
99.
We should find similar artists to invest in.
Oh, Jeffrey, if he was here, he would tell you, because it was a whole disaster. In any case, so a lot of artists that you think cost a lot of money, and they always did, they actually spent a lot of time without selling. And Jeff Koons was one of them, Mike Kelly was another of them. Also brought artists like John Carin, and John was selling, but John did, started with one gallery and then sort of went up. It did the natural way of going up in the world. So the first exhibitions that we did with John, we were selling the works at $45,000 at Larry's, and are now a few million. But yeah.
And how do you? And now do you have your fixed set of artists you work with?
Yeah, now it's a totally. I continuously take on artists that I find interesting, but it's a totally different thing. Larry was at that time as a gallery Madison Avenue and one in Los Angeles, and that's it. So it was the moment in which it was starting to expand, and he needed artists, because if more gallery spaces you have, the more exhibitions you need to do, and you can't just always ask Richard Serra and Cy Twombly to do an exhibition. Although I'm sure it was very tempting to just get Twombly shows.
Would you? So you worked for Anthony Dauphin, then for Gagosian, and then you started your own gallery. Let's talk a little bit about, because here a lot of people are interested in joining the gallery world. Not many starting one, which is very smart, because you've all read my book.
It depends when you started. I started in 2005. You would sell anything in 2005. I mean, literally, you take this bottle, you put it on the wall, and you put a sticker price of 16,000, you would sell it. If you had a gallery...
It doesn't work that way anymore?
No. Since 2008, since October 2008.
Yeah, I heard
Things have
about it.
changed.
And so would you do it the same way as you did? First work in galleries and then start your own one?
I don't know.
If you would now, kind of as an advice to...
Anthony Dauphin had this gallery. We had every morning a 9 o'clock meeting, which was not much fun when you are a young person in London, but everything was discussed, from why this price and what price will you put and why, who should write for the catalog, should we do a catalog, and everything was discussed for every artist. And as a result, there are 11 galleries in Basel who used to work at Anthony Dauphin. It's been the biggest art dealer school, in the world, from Matthew Marks to Gavin Brown to Tanya Bonacta to Sadie Coles to Simon Lee to Jim Cohen to Peter Freeman, blah, blah, blah.
Christine, maybe you should invite him as a professor here. Seems to be like the...
And all of you.
So yeah, that was very valuable. Gagosian, it's a different story. They you're given a telephone and a computer, and if you produce, you are happy, and if you don't produce, you're out. So it's not nurturing as an environment at all.
How do you do it with your employees now? Do you nurture them and...
Unfortunately, yes.
Because then they all leave and start their own galleries?
No, it's because, I don't know, maybe I'm a woman, I don't know.
Okay.
I could not be Larry. I don't want to be Larry.
So you hire students, or you have interns and so on?
I have interns.
I'm
And
asking this for you guys, you know.
a little tip, my intern, that was an intern for a few months, she became my assistant. Now for about a year she writes all my emails. But I hired, and one of the main things is because every morning as an intern, she's not paid. She arrived and she opened the drawer, put her phone, closed the drawer, and then she was there working. And then at lunchtime, she would open the door, look at her phone, and then put it back when lunchtime was finished. So for me, that was like, I didn't ask her, nobody asked her to do it. I saw that and I was like, wow, this person needs to be hired.
Write this down, guys.
And
This
whenever
is
I
how
see
you get a job in the art world. Richard, what is your advice to, I mean, you did the program at Christie's though.
Let's stop talking about that. Yeah.
And so what's your, I mean, you had a really tough start, right? But what's your advice for if I want to become someone in the art world, if I like to work in the art world, what's the best entry point?
Long story short, what I will say first is it has to be your passion. You know, it's key. This is not a job you do like just to make money, or no. It has to be a pure passion. Because in my case scenario, I can tell you that I had a life before. I used to be a winemaker. That's my life. And in 2007, I decided to start from scratch. And I came to see the big guys, and from where I'm from, in Paris, and they told me, you're too late. And I was super mad on that. You're too old. You're too old. Because I won't say the name of the guy that is coming to Lower East Side soon.
Right, right.
You know what I'm
Really,
talking
who
about?
is it? Who is it?
Yeah.
Emmanuel P.
Emmanuel.
Paraton.
And at that time, I read, I loved history. I read some books about dealers, about, for me, the heroes of the galleries world, like, Ambroise Vollard or Leo Castelli. And guess what? Leo Castelli opened his gallery when he was 50. But I realized that there was no point to do for me to stay in Paris, because they love stickers, labels, and you have to stay in the industry where you're from. And so I moved to New York, and the idea was like, you have to be ready to work for free. Because in this world, you're going to first learn, so you have to make your way. And so the tip I could tell you is like, go to start in auction houses. And that's what I did. And I was at Philips, and with no training. I was assistant for the whole contemporary art department. I was the first one to arrive, last one to leave. And a little tip. It's good to attend the bigger auction sales, evening sales in May and October, and try to meet as much, in November, sorry, try to meet as much people you can, and try to make your own name, and to,
It's a network business, right?
It is, yeah.
And James approached it a bit differently, because as a security guard at the Met, you also met a lot of people who are interested in art, right?
Yeah, I was telling people to not touch the art at the Met.
That's a very good principle.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that the advice?
Yeah, I think I've been doing this for so long now.
And then while he talks, think about questions. We're now opening it up to the floor, okay?
I've been doing this for so long now, but I actually still haven't figured it out. I still am kind of baffled by this field, by what works, why things don't work. And I think it kind of encourages a constant sort of curiosity in me that kind of helps push me forward, There was an auction result today for this woman in Judeka Crosby, where her work approached $2 million. And I remember seeing her work at Yale like 6 years ago, and she probably would have given me an artwork back then, And she was like the loveliest, most awesome young woman, Very proud to see that her work is performing so well. But I couldn't have foreseen that, $2 million in 5 short years, it's kind of incredible. So I'm still constantly sort of in awe and baffled by this field, and so I think that's what makes it so interesting.
Great. Let's open it up to the floor. Questions. Let's see. Let's go to question. Wow. You get grades for this?
I'm watching.
Okay. Well, yes, please. You were the
I have
first.
2 questions. Is that okay?
Only one.
Okay.
Mm.
Well, with so many young artists nowadays using social media as a tool to promote themselves and promote their artwork and showcase it, would you guys be open to this idea of recruiting artists via social media, for like a meeting or group show, whatever that may be? Or are you still sort of like skeptical of that?
Too many artists, too little time.
I'm actually open to it. In fact, the artist that I'm showing right now was in a show with the Tate about artist self-portraits. Her name is Amalia Almond, and the title of the article was her image, and it's a selfie that she took that came out through Instagram. And the headline for the story was, "Is this Instagram's first masterpiece?" So I got very lucky when I met Amalia Almond, because she was born 1989 and she's really in the forefront, a pioneer amongst her peers, her generation of artists who utilize social media as a platform. But when I try to articulate what this artist is about to most of my patrons, who actually don't have a connection to social media at all, or have very little connection to it, they're kind of baffled by it. So there's a big gap, a huge, immense gap right now between young artists utilizing these new platforms and it really sinking in not only to the collectors but also to the curators, So I'm finding this to be really challenging, interesting, hard work that I'm doing right now, trying to explain to somebody that this is actually an artwork, but it was on Instagram, and what is Instagram, and all of this, and when I'm the most successful at it, I'll kind of connect the dots between her practice and an artist like Sophie Kahl or Cindy Sherman Film Stills or something. There are threads to her project and things that have happened before, but.
You discovered her through Instagram?
No, I actually, I reached out to Darren Bader.
I thought that was the question.
Yeah. But, I just flagged today a few artists that I'm following on Instagram, and it would be interesting to do an exhibition pulling from artists that I follow on Instagram, but I haven't done it yet,
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
I think you were second.
Hi, Magnus. In your book, you talk about the importance of branding for galleries, and I'm taking this class at the institute called Gallery Management, and we had to do this exercise where we had to invent a gallery with a group project.
Yeah.
Talk about our name and the brand for it. And interestingly, no one named it after themselves. We all had names for it that kind of went with our concept of the gallery. I just wanted to ask the gallery owners here how important it is to have a gallery named after you, and if you think that's something that would change with time and make a gallery actually last longer than the dealer's lifetime, because if it's your name, then maybe after,
It's a great question. Wow. Please, Stefania.
Well, Lisson Gallery, for example, is not the name of the owner who started it a long time ago, and it looks like the son is going to successfully run it for him. And it's already the longest running gallery in the world. It was opened in 1968, and it looks like it will be will span a long time. But otherwise, it is true. I don't see. Sonnabend, when Sonnabend went, the adopted son, Antonio Homan, tried to keep it, but it didn't work out. Most galleries are that person, and then, Castelli Gallery is still open, but it's not without Leo and Barbara running it. It's not the same thing. So, maybe you're right. But then, I don't know, there's something strange, because, for example, there's this gallery in in Paris and London, Sutton Lane, that started as Sutton Lane, and they just recently switched their names. Or modern art. The Stuart Shade Gallery used to be modern art. He switched to Stuart Shade.
Oh, wow.
Oh, well, that was the worst name for a
Terrible
gallery.
name.
Try and find that on Google.
But now they switch their names. It's strange. I don't know what. You're right. I mean, we should stick to it, and then.
If I may, I think there is not a special recipe. It's the idea is to have your own DNA and to be different. So some people have a nice name or some name you can remember. It's marketing. But, I like the idea to create a brand because that's what will last. That's what makes why some people will go to buy $1 million object. The name of the artist, but maybe sadly, it's also where it's from. And when I was working as what they call an art advisor, I mean, you could have so many people tell you that I bought that from Gagosian. So it's a Gagosian, so it's a label, it's a sticker, so it's a Gagosian piece. So it has to be good. Or even worse,
Don Thompson
it's
talked
pricey.
about this.
It's pricey, so they can show that I bought that at Gagosian. So it's like people say, wow, it's at least 6 digits, maybe 7. You know, it's
Good question.
Good news is that
let's
you are a
maybe take
brand.
another question.
You are a brand.
Somebody
I created a brand.
wants to ask a question here. No?
But it's different.
Yes, madam,
Not the
please.
same.
There's a bar where people were saying that galleries would give up their brick and mortar space and just offer live art. But I haven't heard you speak of that tonight.
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, I didn't hear it.
Yeah, so
There was a while ago when it seemed that some galleries were giving up their brick and mortar spaces just to operate out of art fairs. But you haven't mentioned that tonight. Is that still a feasible concept?
I think we talked about it briefly at the beginning, and it felt to me that's kind of what I would recommend to do, because rent is so expensive. But it felt to me that you guys want to stick to the physical space.
Also, they don't accept your art fairs
Exactly.
if you don't have it.
That's
so
the big
That's the big problem.
otherwise, it would be too easy.
right.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of also thought that these online platforms would replace galleries, but that clearly hasn't happened either, you know. So I still think that the area that we occupy is something that people want and need, and the kind of local interface with a gallerist and a small group of artists that's like connected in a real kind of community way is pretty powerful, you know. Although I do think that galleries in New York City are somewhat of an endangered species because of the rising cost of real estate here. And it's interesting to think about it because New York has never had such a high level of like concentrated wealth, probably more than ever right now. And that's what sustains the gallery, but that's also what's driving the prices up and obliterating the galleries, you know. So it's almost like I look at our ecosystem as like the way somebody looks at a landmark building or something. You can either preserve this beautiful thing that has history and is important, or tear it down because it's worth more to tear it down.
What is
know?
right now happening at your former space?
Which is literally what's happening to Stefania's current space. But yeah.
Wasn't there something? Yes.
I have a question. So, out of all the arts that you sell annually, do you know like how much of them are from the recurring patrons, or how much of them just to general public? Like, do you by any chance know?
I would love to sell to general public, but they don't buy that much.
So mostly are from
yeah,
patrons.
people that we know, and collectors that, yeah.
Maybe next question. Yes, here in the very back.
And just to back off that, what's the average age? What's the average age for your patrons? Maybe the age.
average
lot.
age of collectors?
20 to 80, no?
50 in the middle. Yeah.
50, I think everybody agrees, 50?
Yeah.
Well, the average, yeah.
And male. Wrote a book on this. Yes.
That's a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, you two have to run around all the time. Maybe.
I have a question about magic. So you mentioned, it showed us wonderful graphs and numbers that sort of help us understand and compartmentalize this market, which has been obscure for so long. But clearly, our panelists today show that there's so much more to it than just numbers, and there is some sort of magic that happens behind the scenes. There's magic around curation and programming. I wonder if you have figured out what that is. What is it that you do that makes you want to come to gallery every day and keep doing what you're doing and be successful at it?
Great question. Maybe Richard, you want to start first?
You want to start? Ladies first.
I guess that the reason for which I like to go to the gallery every day is that maybe there is some magic that will happen, some artist that shows me fantastic artwork, or some museum that calls up and say, you want to do the show of your artist, or, that's what brings me on.
I think I'm in my everyday, I'm seeking friendship, collegiality, stimulating intellectual conversation. It would be nice to do something historically significant as well. But yeah, no worries.
Richard, you would get fired working for Stefania.
Yeah, the intangibles that you're talking about are kind of the things I'm consistently seeking out as well, or trying to figure out or understand, But going back to what Richard said about like making your own path, there's no linear roadmap, and I find that the most successful gallerists almost approach this the way artists do. They try to figure out who they are, what their voice and perspective is, and the more successful that you're able to do that as an individual, I think the stronger and more potent your voice and project is. And so I think it's kind of a project of endlessly trying to seek that, or kind of tap into that,
Oh, yeah.
Ms. Bortolami, you mentioned before that for you, and presumably for all of the panelists, making culture is foremost among your priorities. And I'm quite curious how you feel, or what scope you feel the art fairs offer for galleries to make culture as a platform. Do you feel that differs? Do you feel that because the context is so different, and the art fairs themselves almost seem to be a cultural force of their own? Do you feel like?
Well, they're a cultural force because a lot of people discover that they enjoy looking at art fairs. But as an artist, unless you're given a booth by yourself and you can make a dialogue, a juxtapositions of your work, it really is not. You're showing one work. It should be a commercial place, an art fairs. And yes, I want to do culture. I also want to sell art because that's what I pay my bills, and the artists pay their own bills. So that's also important. But it's not just the reason. The exhibition space is where, right now I have a show in which the artists cover the floor with this text that someone wrote, and it sort of dialogues with the works on the walls. The moment you take that work and you put it in an art fair, the cultural moment that was the exhibition is gone. That's why we take a lot of pictures.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you see, at the Ferrous Gallery, the flower paintings of Warhol that were shown salon style on one wall. It's breathtaking, and I mean, I hadn't seen it, I've only seen pictures of it. Now you see a flower painting and it looks very nice, and you know that it costs a lot of money, but it's not the same impact that it must have been at the time to get into this gallery and see this flower painting wall.
Maybe let's take another question.
If I may, about the art fairs, I have a feeling that is kind of, if people are boring to see all the time the same things in art fairs, and the created approach is quite a good one. It's like a stage. So it's true, like you have to go for success to sales, but also it's like there is so much offer, there is so many art fairs, and when you go to this huge place, warehouse, you have 300 booths side by side, so you need to be different. So the idea to curate, like, you know, it's I believe it's a good opportunity to get the attention and to sell. So
I agree. I think the young gentleman here with the tie.
Hi, I was just wondering, how do the relationships that you have with the artists that you represent, how does that usually begin?
It's usually another artist that tells you to go and visit this artist. That's usually how it starts, for me at least.
Which one?
This reminds me that this question about moment of magic, because I had my moment of magic when I graduated from the other master. It was after I worked for the auction house, and they asked me, would you like to do, so you should do internship in order to graduate. And I said, can I do something else? Do you mind if I do a pop-up gallery? At that time I was living in Soho, and I was looking for a space. And I found the perfect space, which actually it was not so perfect because there was no floor and no light. But it was well located. It was on West Broadway and Broome, historical place for the Art World of New York. And I knock on the door. Guess who opened the door? His name is Dimitri Daphnis, the son.
The son of
Nassos Daphnis.
Who are you now showing?
Yeah, the big.
This is how you got to know him?
Yeah. And at that time,
and you built a website, right?
And at that time, the Nassos was still alive. He was 95 years old. That was the time at the bottom when he disappeared. And the guy told me, so we became friends. We'd make a deal. I told him, you put a floor, and I will take care of the lights, and we shake hands for 3 months. And he told me, my dad is a 95 years old painter. I was like, sounds fun, you know? Yeah, cool. And then he said that he was 40 years with Leo Castelli. Can you repeat what you said? And that's how this started, you know, and took time and put together the state, catalogue raisonné, and yeah.
This is also how you can meet artists. Very, very nice. Maybe let's do, we have 2 more minutes. Let's do, who's there? Hang on. Yes. Yes, please, go ahead, yeah.
Speaking to the relationship between, going back to the beginning, and since you're doing a report on global art report numbers, and all of the gallerists answered that that's not the only reason they do it. Obviously, if you just want to make money, go into a different business. So
sure.
It seems to me the things that every dealer and also every artist has to negotiate is the relationship between your aesthetic goals, your cultural goals, and the market, and market forces, and there are many ways of balancing, as we've learned from the 3 here. My question is, as you've been going along since, James, you've been doing it 10 years, Richard 2, it's for the gallery 2, and I don't know how long for Stefania.
Too long.
I love it.
So, as you go along, and it seems to me, depending on, there are many ways to try to capitalize, how you have the capital, how dealers come up with the capital to start a gallery probably is different in every case. But as you go along, how much of the capital that you earn, do you have to, you're probably always having to put that back into the business, and how you strategize that. And also how you balance that with your aesthetic goals.
I'm gonna summarize it, the question. So, or maybe does anyone of you want to answer directly? It's about the balance between really money and the cultural part, right?
Yeah, and also what your
Yeah.
monetary strategy is in terms of capital. You know, I mean, you have to keep the gallery running. You know, even as you're successful,
Yeah.
change over time. It's like running a restaurant.
Who wants to answer?
Well,
Stefania.
I have a little rule for myself. I will try to buy something from a show that I really like at the gallery. Not every show, but and then sometimes, I also buy from other galleries. And sometimes, if the thing costs a lot more than what I bought, I sell it. But whenever I sell one artwork, I always buy another one. So I always have at least the same amount of artworks, if not more. And not just my artists, but also other artists. So I guess that makes me feel good. You buy something for 10, you sell it for 200, and you buy another thing for 20. Ongoing collection that always gets sold because unfortunately I need to sell.
Okay, one last question. Yes, here we go.
Hi. I have a question. I used to use your app, Magnus, so a little bit out of the gallery space. I just wonder, because I read that it was off the market because of some regulation, legal fights, and what is the current status? Because I'm just curious, because you're sitting here, probably have an idea around that.
Very simple. You know my app, right?
Yeah.
It works like Shazam for art. You take a picture and then it shows you what it is. Download it. It's for free. It works super well. People love it. It shows you what's on around you, what shows are currently going on, the prices of artworks. It's a really nice tool. Just at the fairs, we had a fantastic number of people using it. It's growing really high speed. I'm very happy about it. Download it. It's for free. So that was that.
Is it back on?
Yeah, it's back on. App Store, Android. App Store, Android. Well, thank you very much. Thanks a lot. And also thank you to you guys. Great questions. Wow.
Thank you all for joining us. So we're going to have a reception and a book signing outside, so I hope you can stick around. Thank you so much, our panelists.